Hi, I'm Sarah. My husband John, son Connor, myself, and our 2 dogs, Bella and Watson, are exploring Alberta in our RV, and we want to share our experiences with you.
This trip, we decided to head out to the Pembina River Provincial Park, a central Alberta campsite located about an hour west of Edmonton. Tucked in between the town of Evansburg and the hamlet of Entwistle, this park is known primarily as a popular location for taking a relaxing float down the Pembina River. Much of the campground is treed with a decent amount of privacy between sites. That changes, however, if you're looking to stay on one of those sites close to the beach that also serves as the end of the river float. Most of these sites are side by side with no natural barrier between you and your neighbors, so you're gonna cozy up. Our site was the best of both worlds. We were on the corner of a loop close to the beach, but also surrounded by trees. Once we were settled in on our site, it was time to try out the river. But first, the long and arduous chore of pumping up our 2 inflatable paddleboards by hand. Perhaps one day we'll invest in a motorized pump, but today was not that day. There used to be 2 main options when it came to entering the river. For a shorter float, you could start at a small beach on the southwest corner of the provincial park, or if you were looking for a longer float, there was a small business called Pembina River Tubing located just south of Entwistle. Sadly, this burned down during the wildfires of 2023, although the business owners are planning to rebuild, so keep an eye out for the reopening. For the shorter float, there is a conveniently located parking lot near the beach that we stopped at to unload our paddleboards and various other flotation devices. Be warned, the parking lot fills up quickly and you may not be able to find a parking spot here on a busy day. While we blew up all the tubes in the floating cooler for drinks, Connor and his cousin Evan made good use of the playground. There are also washrooms here in case somebody needs to go before heading out on the river. Once we were ready, it was a short walk to the starting point and then into the water we went. While the water felt a little chilly at first, on a hot day it won't take long before you appreciate how nice the cool water feels. The float was very peaceful. Any of you have little boys, or big boys for that matter, that you're worried may get bored, packing a few water pistols can be just the thing to keep them happy. When you come to the point where the Lobstick River joins the Pembina, you know you're coming to the end of the float. Keep an eye out for a sign on your right that will warn you that you have arrived at the last chance to exit the river. The beach here is a little rocky, but can still be a nice place to hang out after your float. I went back to the campsite to pick up the dogs, and we brought out some folding chairs and snacks to enjoy while the kids played on the beach. Although the river water made Watson look like a drowned rat, he had a blast running in and out of the water, attacking driftwood, and chasing the boys. The next day, we tried out some of the hiking trails in the park, including the Evansburg trail that leads up to, you guessed it, Evansburg. It was a hot day, and this trail is not for the faint of heart, as it is a constant steep incline and just keeps going up and up and up, seemingly forever. Thankfully, once we reached Evansburg, it was not a long walk to reach a convenience store where we could purchase some refreshing cold drinks and rest in the shade. Re-energized, we headed back to the campground, gravity working with us this time to make it a much easier hike on the way back. I mentioned earlier that the Pembina River Tubing Company burned down, but if you have 2 vehicles and want a longer and more interesting float, you could always leave one vehicle at the endpoint and take the other down to southwest Entwistle. I'm not endorsing this, but there are paths through the fire-ravaged forest you can take if you're willing to hike a bit to get down to the river, although it can be a little steep in places, so be careful. From our new lodge point, we set off down the river, John and I on the paddleboards, and Chris and Nadia and the boys all connected together on the tubes. The river here is a bit more of an adventure, with many rapids and obstacles in places that made things a bit more challenging, especially for those on the tubes. A look online afterwards showed that the park website has a brochure on floating down the river, and it specifically says not to tie tubes or rafts together, and that's good advice. We can definitely see why. It was difficult at times for the convoy to dodge obstacles and avoid getting stuck. Thankfully, we had no major mishaps and enjoyed some beautiful views, fun mini rapids, and a little more water gun fighting for good measure. All in all, the Pembina Provincial Park Campground is a great place if you want to enjoy floating down the river, and an adequate place to camp. The campground itself doesn't have a lot to set itself apart from the competition, but if you enjoy a good river float, then you can't go wrong giving this campsite a try. Until next time, happy camping!